It was supposed to be the best summer of our lives, the kind of memory that you look back on years later and smile about, the kind that feels endless, untouched by responsibility, glowing with freedom. I had just graduated high school, and for the first time, there was nothing holding me back. No teachers, no assignments, no curfews, just wide-open days and a future that felt limitless. In Oregon, graduating seniors had a tradition that was older than anyone could remember. You drove out to the cliffs overlooking the valley, climbed to the top, and sat there to declare to the world, "We made it, we're free now." So that's exactly what we did. It was me, Ethan, Riley, and Mason for best friends, ready to mark the beginning of the rest of our lives. We chose a cliffside trail just off Route 62, a place we'd heard about from other classes before us. The climb wasn't too hard, maybe 15 minutes, if you watched your footing. But the view was worth every scrape and bruise. When we finally reached the top, the valley stretched before us in breathtaking silence. Endless pine forests swayed in the wind, and the highway below cut across the land like a shining silver ribbon. We dropped our bags, sat on the flat stone surface, and cracked open beers to celebrate our freedom. The air was fresh, cool, and alive, and we laughed until our voices echoed against the rocks. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely untouchable. Nothing could reach us up here, not the past, not the future, only the wide-open sky and the bond of friendship we carried. But then something changed. My eyes caught movement down on the highway, where a faded blue pickup truck came flying down the road. The truck screeched as its tires locked, and it reversed suddenly into the gravel turnout where Riley's SUV was parked. Dust clouded the air, and all of us leaned forward, watching with narrowed eyes. A man climbed out of the truck, tall and broad-shouldered, with a sweat-stained cap pulled low over his face. At first glance, he looked like any traveler, but there was something unsettling about the way he moved. He circled Riley's SUV slowly, running his hand along the frame before tugging hard at each door handle. He leaned against the glass, peering inside as though he was searching for something. "What the hell is he doing?" Riley muttered, his voice low and tense. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the stone beneath him, eyes locked on the stranger. Mason couldn't hold back. He cupped his hands to his mouth and shouted, "Hey!" His voice carried far across the valley, echoing back from the canyon walls. The man froze mid-motion, his body stiffening as if caught red-handed. Slowly, almost unnaturally, he tilted his head upward, toward us, his face still hidden by the cap, and then he waved. A small, casual flick of the hand that should have been harmless, but somehow felt worse than anything else. We exchanged nervous glances, half expecting him to leave. But instead, he turned back and began pounding on the SUV's windows with both fists, the dull thud echoing across the empty lot. "Leave it alone," Ethan shouted down, his voice cracking with a mix of fear and bravado. Then, desperate to scare the man off, he added, "We've got weapons up here." That was the mistake. The words lingered in the air like smoke, and the man stopped dead in his tracks. He turned toward us again, his lips curling into a slow, crooked grin that made my stomach twist. From his jacket, he pulled out a gun, holding it up so the sun caught the steel. The world seemed to tilt. My stomach dropped, and my skin went cold as I realized we were suddenly in real danger. The man raised the weapon above his head like it was a trophy. His voice carried up to us, sharp and mocking. "So do I, kids." Panic tore through us. Without thinking, we scrambled down the cliffside, rocks clattering and dirt slipping beneath our palms as we clawed our way to the bottom. By the time we reached the ground, the sound of shattering glass split through the air like a gunshot. Riley's SUV window exploded, scattering shards across the gravel. The man turned, aiming the gun directly at us with steady hands. His voice roared across the lot. "Stop." We froze instantly, every muscle locked in place. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, so loud I thought the others could hear it. "Phones, wallets. Drop them," he ordered, his tone calm but razor-sharp. It wasn't a request, it was law. Shaking, we obeyed. One by one, we tossed our phones and wallets into the dirt, watching helplessly as he crouched down and picked them up without ever lowering the weapon. When he was finished, he drew a knife from his belt, the blade catching the last glimmers of daylight. He slashed at Riley's front tire, the hiss of air escaping loud and cruel. None of us moved. None of us even breathed. The only sound was the steady hiss of the dying tire and the faint whistle of the wind through the trees. The man climbed back into his truck. That's when I saw it clearly. There were no plates. No way to trace him. No way to follow. He slammed the door, gunned the engine, and tore away, the roar of his truck fading into the distance. Within moments, he was gone, swallowed by the highway. We stood in silence, staring at the broken glass, the scattered dirt, and the emptiness he left behind. For the first time, the valley felt hostile, like it had witnessed something it shouldn't. When the police finally arrived, the truck was long gone. No witnesses, no plates, no evidence. It was as if the man had vanished into thin air. It should have been the best day of our summer, a celebration of freedom and the beginning of adulthood. Instead, it became the night we learned how quickly freedom can turn into fear. This happened 3 summers ago, back when the world felt simpler, but the highways felt endless. My cousin Ryan and I had taken on the insane task of driving a U-Haul from Oregon to Virginia. It wasn't just boxes and furniture packed into the back, it was all the pieces of Ryan's fresh start. A whole new chapter for him. I agreed to help, because who doesn't love a road trip, right? We planned for music, snacks, and late-night drives where the stars looked close enough to touch. Ryan was the planner, the one who calculated the gas mileage, the rest stops, even the hours of driving each day. I was the dreamer, just along for the ride and the adventure. Neither of us had the slightest clue what was waiting for us in the desert. Almost everyone who knew we were driving through Texas had offered the same advice. Don't stop in West Texas unless you absolutely have to. People said it like a warning, with a weight behind their voices. I figured it was nothing, just urban legends from travel blogs or family members who wanted to spook us. But warnings are funny things. You only realize how real they are when it's already too late. The plan was flawless on paper. Gas up in New Mexico, blaze across West Texas without stopping, then collapse into some motel in Louisiana. It was supposed to be just another leg of the trip, long but uneventful. Ryan's calculations had it down to the gallon, and he'd triple-checked the mileage before we left. But U-Hauls don't care about your plans, or your math, or your sense of safety. The heavy load chewed through gas like fire tearing through paper. Within hours, the needle dipped lower than either of us expected. We had no choice but to take the next exit into a small town. From a distance, the town looked ordinary enough, the kind of place that lived and died by its single gas station. A flickering diner sign sat crooked in the heat, and a row of silent houses lined the road. Nothing screamed danger, but nothing felt welcoming either. My stomach tightened the moment we rolled in, like some part of me knew we'd just made a mistake. The gas station sat at the center of town, faded paint peeling off its sign, but the pumps were still working. I stepped out to fill up, while Ryan went inside for water and snacks. At first, it was quiet, the kind of desert silence that presses against your ears. Then I realized it wasn't just silence. It was stares. A man leaned against the wall by the entrance, arms crossed, eyes fixed on me. He didn't blink, didn't look away when I caught him watching. Another sat inside an old sedan by the curb, his head slowly following every move I made. I kept my focus on the pump, pretending not to notice, but each second stretched, heavy and unnatural. Ryan came out fast, his shoulders stiff, and shoved 2 bottles into my hands. "Let's go," he muttered, not even making eye contact. His voice was low and clipped, the way it gets when something's seriously wrong. I didn't ask questions. We just got back into the truck and pulled out of the lot. The highway shimmered in the distance like a mirage. So close, I felt like I could run to it. But every road we turned onto refused to take us there. One ended at a chain-link fence with no gate. Another looped in a wide arc and dropped us right back in front of the gas station. It was like the streets themselves were folding back in on us, twisting reality into a maze. Ryan pulled out the GPS, but it sat frozen, a useless gray screen with no signal. The more we tried, the more hopeless it felt, like the whole town had been designed to keep outsiders trapped. My pulse hammered in my ears. After the 3rd loop back to the same intersection, Ryan pulled over. He rested his forehead on the wheel, muttering, "This doesn't make sense." I wanted to tell him it was fine, that we'd figure it out, but my throat was dry. The lie wouldn't even come out. We finally decided to try asking for help, though everything in me screamed not to. We pulled back into the gas station, the buzzing fluorescent light overhead casting harsh yellow shadows. Ryan got out reluctantly, and I stayed behind, watching through the windshield. The man who had been leaning against the wall was gone, which felt even worse somehow. Minutes crawled by before Ryan came back. He didn't speak until the truck was moving again. "She said there's an on-ramp 20 miles south," he muttered. His knuckles were white against the wheel. "That's not bad," I offered weakly. "We can do 20 miles. But Ryan shook his head, his jaw tight. The way she said it, the way she kept asking where we were going, it felt wrong. His eyes flicked to the mirrors like he expected someone to be following. I don't trust it. We turned down a narrow side street, trying to think of another option. The U-Haul rattled over potholes, the buildings around us leaning inward like they were closing in. That's when a dusty old pickup rolled up beside us. The driver leaned out, a weathered man in a sun-bleached cowboy hat. "You boys lost." His voice was calm, but there was a weight behind it, a seriousness that made my skin crawl. Ryan hesitated, then nodded. "Trying to get back to the highway," he said, his words cautious. The man tilted his head, studying us for a moment too long. "You asked the clerk," he said flatly. Ryan nodded, explaining what she told him. The man's expression shifted instantly, hard and sharp. "Don't," he said, his tone cutting like a knife. "That road don't lead to no highway. It leads to nowhere." My heart thudded as the silence stretched. The man leaned closer, his voice dropping even lower. "You take that route, you won't come back." His words weren't dramatic, weren't exaggerated, they were certain. Ryan swallowed hard. "Then where do we go?" The man glanced around, as if checking the shadows before he spoke again. "Behind the grain mill," he said. "There's a gravel road. Looks abandoned, but it'll take you out. Don't stop, don't slow down, just go." Before either of us could ask questions, he rolled up his window. The truck rumbled off, swallowed by dust and desert silence. It was as if he hadn't been there at all, just a warning whispered into the dark. Ryan and I sat frozen, the weight of his words sinking in. Every instinct in me screamed that we should listen. Ryan finally exhaled, gripping the wheel. "We don't have a choice," he said quietly. His voice didn't sound like his anymore. We found the grain mill at the far edge of town, its rusting silos looming like broken bones against the blood-red sky. And just where he said, there was a narrow gravel road, half hidden by weeds and shadows. It didn't look like it went anywhere, but it was all we had. The U-Haul rattled violently as we pulled onto it, the tires spitting rocks, the whole truck groaning. Dust poured in through the vents, stinging my eyes and throat. The road twisted endlessly, deeper and deeper into the brush, each turn more disorienting than the last. The sun was sinking fast, the desert bleeding into shadows. I kept looking in the side mirrors, half expecting headlights to appear behind us. The silence was unbearable, broken only by the crunch of gravel and the rattle of the truck. Every second felt like a countdown. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the road opened up. My chest tightened as I saw it wide and empty, stretching straight into forever. The highway, the real highway. Ryan floored it, the U-Haul roaring forward like it knew we'd been set free. Relief slammed into me, almost painful, my body shaking as adrenaline drained. Neither of us spoke, afraid that words might pull us back into whatever nightmare we'd escaped. We didn't stop driving until Louisiana swallowed us whole. By then, the town felt like a dream, an impossible place you could convince yourself never existed. But silence followed us, heavy and unbroken. Even now, years later, I can still feel the way those roads bent. It wasn't chance, it wasn't confusion. That town was built to keep people in, and if not for the stranger in the pickup, Ryan and I might never have made it out.